tonight, there is nowhere to reach, and nothing waiting for you at the end of this walk. Only a quiet village of stone and lamp glow, resting beneath the dark, where temple towers stand like patient shapes against the night, and every path has already softened into stillness. So let your breathing slow a little now, and let the day loosen its grip without effort, because nothing here needs to be solved, and nothing here asks anything of you. We will simply move gently through an ancient temple village after nightfall, where the last voices have faded into courtyards, where small flames bow inside alcoves of carved stone, where the scent of earth, sandalwood, and cooling dust lingers in the air, and where even the silence seems warm. You do not need to remember anything. You do not need to follow anything. You do not even need to hold on to the images for long. Just let them pass softly, one by one, like lantern light touching old walls and slipping away again. And as the village settles more deeply around us, you may settle too, with nothing to prepare for, nothing to guard, and nothing left to do but drift. I arrive when the village has already given itself to the night. Not in darkness exactly, but in that gentler hour when the world is made from dim gold, pale ash, and the soft black blue of open sky above sleeping roofs. The path beneath my feet is packed earth, cool now after the long warmth of day, and smoothed by so many quiet crossings that it feels less like a road and more like a memory worn into the ground. On either side, low homes rest close to one another, with mud walls, timber frames, and shaded verandas now emptied of movement, though the shape of life still lingers there. A stool near a doorway, a folded cloth left over a rail, a clay pot catching the last warmth of the wall beside it, and somewhere nearby the faint sweetness of milk, rice, smoke, and flowers left earlier in prayer. Ahead of me, beyond the line of smaller houses, the temple rises above the village like something that has not gone to sleep at all, though it too is quiet. Its carved tower pale where the moon finds it, darker where shadows gather in the deeper cuts of stone. Its outline steady and reassuring above the clustered lanes, above the trees, above the last dim cooking fires now sinking into red. I do not hurry toward it. There is no need, because the village itself is part of the temple tonight. Every courtyard, every threshold, every worn step, every walled garden holding the same calm, as if the silence has spread outward from the sanctum and settled over everything it can touch. A small oil lamp burns in a niche set into the wall of a house to my left, so small and yet so certain, its flame bending once in the night air before standing straight again. And I pause for a moment beside it, feeling how even this little light changes the space around it. The cracked plaster glows amber, the edge of the doorway softens, a brass water vessel near the step gathers one curved line of gold, and the dark itself seems kinder for being asked to share the wall with such a patient flame. Further on, another lamp answers from across the lane, and another still, farther away, so that the road seems gently stitched together by points of warm light, leading not with brightness, but with permission. The village is not silent in an empty way, it breathes. From one courtyard comes the soft clink of metal vessels being stacked for morning. From another, the hush of someone drawing a final line of water across the threshold to settle the dust. Somewhere a wooden door touches its frame with a small, tired sound, and then all is still again, except for the leaves overhead, barely moving, and a night insect making one thin thread of sound from the roots of a tree. Even the animals seem folded into rest, a bullock lying in shadow beneath a shelter, a dog curled nose to tail beside a wall that still keeps a little warmth, goats close together under a low roof, their shapes half lost in the dark, each creature settled into the same peace as the stones and beams around them. I pass beneath a fig tree, whose roots have lifted the edge of an old platform near the lane, and here the air feels cooler, touched by leaf shade even at night. Strings of dried flowers hang near a doorway, their colour gone dim, though their shape remains delicate in the lamp glow. The plastered houses give way now to walls of cut stone, not grand, only older, and built close around a small outer court where the temple begins to gather itself. There are shallow steps here, worn in the center, smooth from years of bare feet rising and descending, and when I place my hand lightly on the side wall as I climb, I can feel the night stored in the stone, calm, dense, and wonderfully steady. The first court is open to the sky. A peepal tree leans over one corner, its leaves silvered in places by moonlight, and dark in others where they overlap like layers of silk. Beneath it stands a low platform, empty now except for a brass plate, a little bowl, and the faint powdery trace of petals that must have been brighter earlier in the evening. The air smells of oil, cooled incense, and the mineral scent of old stone that has released the day's heat at last. Every surface seems touched by use, and yet untroubled by it. Pillars marked by hands, thresholds rounded by years, carvings softened not by neglect, but by time passing gently over them. Nothing here feels abandoned, only at rest. At the edge of the court, a corridor runs inward beneath a roof supported by carved pillars. And each pillar holds its own small world of shapes, now half hidden by shadow. Curves and lines, flowers and patterns, the suggestion of figures, all softened into something the eye does not need to study. The lamps placed along the base of the wall are low and sparse, giving just enough light to make the corridor feel inhabited by warmth instead of darkness. And as I step into it, the sounds of the village loosen behind me, not disappearing, only thinning, until the temple's quiet becomes the louder thing, a quiet made from depth, from shelter, from stone holding its own long breath. My footsteps slow even more on the floor here, polished in places, faintly rough in others, and the air changes from open night to enclosed coolness, carrying the sweetness of old sandalwood, faint ash, dry flowers, and the clean trace of water poured over stone. Somewhere deeper within, a bell once sounded not long ago, and though it is silent now, the memory of it seems to remain in the space, like a circle widening across still water. I feel no need to go farther yet, because already the mind begins to release itself here. Already the thoughts that arrived with me start to settle low and quiet, like dust after a gate has closed. So I remain a while between village and sanctum, between open sky and inner shadow, held by the first court, the tree, the pillars, the lamps, the worn steps, the low doorways, the sleeping houses beyond the wall, and by the simple feeling that everything that needed to happen here has already happened, and all that remains tonight is gentleness, the afterglow of devotion, the peace that follows routine, the deep ease of a place that has repeated its rhythm so long that even silence knows exactly where to rest. When I move again, it is not toward anything urgent, only deeper into the sleeping order of the village, where the temple's calm has flowed outward through side lanes and smaller shrines, through washing stones and wells, through little garden walls and quiet verandas where the evening has long since folded itself away. A narrow passage leads from the outer court along the side of the temple complex, and here the wall runs high beside me, cool and pale where the moon touches it, dark where carved recesses gather shadow. At its base, small offerings rest in stillness, a brass lamp burned nearly low, a few marigold heads beginning to curl inward, grains of coloured powder softened by night moisture, the remains of attention now returned to rest. The lane opens into a cluster of homes built close around a shared courtyard, and this place feels especially tender at night, because so many signs of ordinary life remain visible in the hush. A grinding stone near the corner, washed clean, woven mats rolled and leaned against a wall, a copper pot turned upside down to dry, sandals left neatly outside a threshold, and in the middle of the courtyard, a tulsi plant rising from its little platform, dark leaves holding the faintest trace of reflected lamplight. Someone has left a small wick burning beside it, and its flame is so soft that it seems less to light the plant than to keep it company. Above, the eaves throw gentle shadows across the plastered walls, and strings of drying cloth stir once in the higher air, then rest again. Behind one half-closed shutter, I sense the slow, regular quiet of people already asleep, not heard exactly, but present, the way warmth remains in a room after voices have gone. Somewhere farther back, a cradle rope creaks once, then falls still. In another house, someone turns in sleep, and the cot answers with a faint wooden sigh. These are not interruptions to the night. They are part of its fabric, small soft stitches in the long cloth of rest. I continue through the courtyard and past a low gate into a garden path that skirts the rear of the temple grounds. Here the air changes again, greener now, cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth, jasmine somewhere unseen, and water collected in stone basins. Banana leaves stand motionless in the dark, like folded fans. A mango tree spreads low branches above the wall, and white flowers, nearly invisible themselves, give off a sweetness that seems larger than their size, drifting lightly through the warm night. The ground is uneven here, edged with roots and old stones, and I walk slowly, not from caution, but because everything encourages slowness. Nothing asks to be reached before its time. Ahead, the path widens beside a stepped tank, where water lies almost black, except where the moon has laid a narrow, trembling ribbon across it. Each step descending into the tank has been shaped by years of feet and water, and the corners are rounded now, softened by use into something almost kind. A stone pavilion stands near one edge, open on all sides, its columns reflected dimly below, and I stop there for a while, because water at night has its own way of quieting the mind. It does not call attention to itself, it simply receives whatever light is given, and offers back a gentler version. The surface barely moves, only enough to loosen the reflected lines of pillars, leaves, and sky. Somewhere a drop falls from an overflow spout and opens a widening ring that disappears before it reaches the far side. The sound is tiny, yet in this hour it fits complete, as if nothing larger is required. The temple tower rises beyond the trees, mirrored faintly in the tank, and its reflection seems softer than the stone itself, more dream than structure, less weight and more presence. Around the pavilion, the stone floor is cool, and the carved edge of the parapet holds traces of old patterns beneath my fingers. Lotuses worn smooth, borders almost erased, devotion passed so often through touch that ornament has become texture. Beyond the tank, a little shrine stands beneath a neem tree, no taller than a person, with a sloping roof and a lamp set in a deep alcove. Its glow does not travel far, yet it fills the small shrine completely, making the interior seem warm and whole, while the tree above holds the dark. There are bells hanging from the beam, still now, and strips of cloth tied to one side, hardly moving. I do not step close, I simply watch from the path, letting the little shape of it remain simple in the night. Lamp, alcove, tree, stillness. Sometimes the mind rests best when given only a few gentle things to hold. I follow the wall farther, where the village begins again, in quieter dwellings, set slightly apart from one another. Here there are wider verandas and low platforms under the open sky, where people must sit in the evenings, now empty, except for folded blankets, a basket, and one forgotten cup, catching a small square of moonlight. In one courtyard, rice has been spread earlier to cool, and now sits covered beneath cloth. In another, flower garlands rest in a brass plate by the door, waiting perhaps for morning, their fragrance dim but lingering. A broom of date cybers leans where it was last used, and near the threshold, rangoli lines once bright are now softened at the edges, as if night itself has stepped lightly over them. Everywhere there is evidence not of activity, but of completion, not of tasks left unfinished, but of routines lovingly closed for the day. And that feeling passes into me as I walk, as if the village is teaching without words how to end things gently, how to set them down in order, how to leave the vessel cleaned, the doorway swept, the lamp lit, the mat rolled, the offering placed, the water drawn for morning, and then to let the rest dissolve into darkness without regret. It is a deeply comforting order, not rigid, not severe, only practiced, repeated enough times that effort has become ease. The farther I go, the softer the world seems to become. Edges blur, sounds thin out. The temple tower is now seen only in glimpses between roofs and trees, one pale angle above a wall, one carved tier above a line of leaves, then nothing again. A breeze moves through at last, carrying the smell of ash from a banked cooking fire and stirring the loose end of a hanging cloth. A lamp flickers behind a lattice screen, briefly brighter, then calm once more. Somewhere a nightbird calls once from the far side of the tank, and the village receives the sound without waking. I come to a final little square where 3 lanes meet. At the center is a stone platform around an old tree, and beside it a long bench built into the wall, empty beneath the stars. This feels like the place where people gather before dusk slips away, where conversations end by degrees, where children were called indoors, where the last cup was finished, where someone rose, smiling, and said good night into the warm air. But all of that has gone inward now, and only the shape of the pause remains. I sit there for a moment inside that absence, and feel how peaceful it is to enter a place after all expectation has left it, after the village has become fully itself again, quiet, lamplit, earth-scented, and completely unafraid of the dark. When I return toward the temple, the night feels deeper, though nothing has changed except the way stillness has gathered. The paths seem softer now, the lamps lower, the spaces between sounds longer and more complete. I enter once more through the side court, past the people leaves and the shallow steps, and this time I follow the inner corridor farther, toward the parts of the temple that hold silence not only around them, but within them. Pillars rise in rows, their bases warm in lamp glow, and their upper carvings fading into shadow above, so that the roof seems held up not by weight, but by repetition, stone after stone, shape after shape, patient, unmoving, serene. The floor beneath me has the smooth coolness of water turned to rock, and every few steps there is a shallow depression worn by countless feet that once crossed here with flowers, vessels, baskets, folded hands, whispered hopes, ordinary prayers, and simple daily reverence. Tonight, none of that remains in motion, only in atmosphere, only in the gentle fullness of the place. The lamps along the corridor are set far apart, and because of that, each one becomes its own small world, one lighting a lotus carved into a base stone, another reaching only as far as a brass plate left near a wall, another warming a hanging curtain that covers a side doorway, its cloth heavy and unmoving in the night air. From somewhere unseen comes the faint fragrance of fresh water poured over stone, mingled with sandal paste and the last trace of burning camphor. The scents are delicate, not strong, and seem to belong more to the stone itself now than to any recent act, as if the temple has absorbed them over years and gives them back only a little at a time. In a side chamber, I glimpse the outline of vessels stacked in shadow, their curved shoulders touched by a thin line of gold. Nearby, a broom rests across the threshold, and folded cloths have been placed with care on a ledge. Even here, in the heart of the sacred space, the tenderness of routine remains. Not grand ceremony, but the quiet labor that allows peace to continue. I pass beneath a doorway lower than the others and enter a mandapa open to the courtyard on one side. Moonlight reaches across the floor in pale rectangles between pillars. Lamp glow answers from within, and where the two kinds of light meet, the stone seems almost silver. The carvings here are deeper, more intricate, though at this hour I do not read them. I let them remain what they are in the dark. Ridges, curves, softened faces, petals, borders, time folded into surface. Above, somewhere near the ceiling, the bat shifts lightly and becomes still again. A bell rope hangs down near one column, unmoving, its end wrapped in cloth polished by hands, and I think of how even sound here is at rest. At the center of the hall stands a low platform with brass lamps arranged upon it, most extinguished now, each wick curled inward like a sleeping flower. Only one still burning with a small, steady flame, enough to keep the darkness gentle, enough to hold the hall together. The shadows it makes are not harsh. They lie softly behind the columns, beneath the ledges, inside the recesses, turning distance into depth without ever becoming severe. I sit for a while on the stone floor near the edge of the platform and let the temple surround me without asking anything in return. This is the kind of quiet that does not empty the mind by force. It simply gives the mind nothing sharp to catch on. Beyond the mandapa, the innermost passage narrows. The air is cooler there and the walls closer, worn smooth at shoulder height, where generations have brushed past, and the lamps are fewer still, leaving longer stretches of shadow between one pool of gold and the next. It is not a frightening darkness, only an intimate one, like stepping farther into the inside of a thought, until even language begins to thin out. A priest must have passed not long ago. I see the faint damp mark of recent water on the floor, a brass spoon resting near a vessel, a garland set aside, and a tiny drift of white blossoms fallen in one corner. There is a doorway ahead, curtained and still, beyond which the sanctum rests in its own dimness. I do not need to enter. The closeness of it is enough. The feeling of a center held quietly behind stone and cloth, behind shadow and lamp smoke, behind repetition and devotion and time. It is enough to stand nearby and feel how every corridor, every step, every courtyard, every lane in the village seems to lean inward toward this still point, not with urgency, but with belonging, as if all the roads, all the routines, all the sweeping and washing and lighting and waiting, all the evenings of ordinary life have slowly taught the world how to gather itself around one quiet center. When I turn away again, the temple no longer feels separate from the village at all. The same peace that rested in the courtyards rests here. The same completion, the same end-of-day gentleness. Outside, people sleep under woven covers on cops near open windows. Inside, the lamps lower themselves one by one into silence. Outside, cooking pots cool on stone shelves. Inside, brass vessels wait for dawn. Outside, trees keep watch over lanes and wells. Inside, carved pillars keep watch over corridors and sanctums, all of it belonging to one continuous night, one woven stillness spread across roof tile, leaf, platform, threshold, and shrine. I step again into the open court beneath the tree, and the sky above seems larger now for having been absent. Stars rest in the dark between branches. The moon has shifted slightly westward, and the outer wall holds a warmer tone where the remaining lamps blow up against it. Deeper in the village, a woman coughs once in her sleep. A calf stirs against straw. The leaves tremble with one passing breeze, then settle back into place. Nothing rises from that softness. No new event, no interruption, only the reassurance that life continues even in silence, and perhaps most beautifully there. I stay there longer than I realize because time has become wide and unimportant. The mind does not mark it in such places. It only loosens, thought by thought, until all that remains are simple impressions that do not demand to be remembered. Cool stone, warm lamp, shadowed pillar, a fragrance of ash and flowers, a doorway half hidden, a village asleep beyond the wall, a sanctum at the center of all things, quiet and unseen. And the more these impressions soften, the more sleep seems to draw near, not as something to chase, but as something already waiting just beyond the next breath. At last, I leave the inner halls and drift back out through the temple village, not because the peace has ended, but because it has spread so fully through everything that there is no inside and outside anymore. The same calm that lives beneath the carved roof lives also in the lanes, in the wells, in the tree roots lifting old stones, in the sleeping houses with their lamps nearly spent, in the folded mats, in the brass pots drying by the walls, in the night flowers giving up their fragrance to the dark. I walk slowly through it all, as one might move through the final moments of a dream one does not wish to disturb. The lane beyond the temple gate is quieter now than when I first arrived. Even the small household sounds have gone. No vessel, no door, no cradle rope, no whispered exchange behind shutters. Only the long settled hush of many people deeply asleep. The lamps have burned lower, and some are gone out completely, leaving their niches dark but still warm in shape, as if the memory of flame remains inside the clay. The earth path catches pale dustlight from the moon, and the shadows of beams and eaves stretch across it like soft bars of ink. Somewhere above, prayer flags or drying cloth move once in a high faint breeze, then rest again without a sound. I pass the shared courtyard with the tulsi platform, and the little wick there has almost finished its work, its flame no taller than a fingernail now, steady and uncomplaining. The leads above it look black against the dim wall, the surrounding doorways closed, the thresholds swept clean, the rangoli patterns nearly dissolved into the ground. I feel here the deep comfort of repetition, the knowledge that morning will come not as a surprise, but as a continuation. Someone will open a door, someone will draw water, someone will relight a lamp, someone will rinse the step and mark the earth with fresh lines. But none of that is needed yet. The village is allowed to remain unfinished until dawn, allowed to rest inside its own pause. The garden path behind the houses is almost silver now, where the moon reaches it between leaves. The tank lies still and dark, holding the stars in broken fragments near the edge, and the pavilion by the water seems lighter than before, as if it has slowly absorbed the night around it. I stand once more beside the parapet and look down at the reflection of the temple tower, blurred gently by the smallest movement on the surface. It seems right that even stone should become soft here, that towers should melt into water, the carvings should fade into shadow, that the shorelines of day should loosen into something less demanding before sleep. The world has spent all evening becoming easier to hold, and now it asks to be held hardly at all. A breeze moves across the tank and brings with it the smell of wet stone, jasmine, and a trace of smoke from distant embers nearly gone cold. The bells at the shrine beneath the neem tree answer with only the faintest touch, not a ring, only a suggestion of metal meeting air, enough to remind the night of its own delicacy. I keep walking, and every part of the village seems to offer one final small image before letting go. A brass vessel on a sill, a sleeping dog under a cart, a garland bowl left near a step, moonlight caught on the edge of a roof tile, the pale trunk of a tree rising beside a dark wall, the outline of temple carvings high above, disappearing into the sky. Soon the houses begin to thin, the path widens, and I find the outer edge of the village, where open ground stretches beyond the last boundary wall. From here the temple can be seen whole again, though dimly, its tower rising over roofs and trees, not bright, not dramatic, only present, and that presence feels enough. Below it, the village lies gathered close, every home tucked inward, every lane folded into shadow, every little courtyard hidden, except for the occasional ember of lamp glow left near a doorway. It looks less like a place built by hands now, and more like a resting constellation arranged upon the earth, points of warmth held together by darkness. I stop there and look back for a long time, not to memorize it, because sleep has no use for perfect memory, but to let the final feeling sink in fully. A temple village at night, stone and earth, lamp and moon, prayer and routine, sanctum and courtyard, water and tree shadow, ordinary life resting beside the sacred without separation, and all of it softened by the same merciful stillness, the kind of stillness that does not erase the day but settles it gently, the kind that turns every finished task into silence, every silence into shelter, every shelter into invitation. And now even the invitation grows lighter, because there is nothing more to see, and nothing more the mind needs to hold. The village can remain behind you now, the temple tower can fade into the dark, the lanes can empty completely into sleep, the lamps can burn down to their last quiet glow, and you can let the whole night recede as softly as it arrived, with no effort, no keeping track, no need to stay awake for one more image. Only the feeling remains, cool stone under moonlight, the scent of sandalwood and damp earth, the hush of sleeping houses, the black water of the temple tank, pillars resting in shadow, one final lamp breathing in a niche, and beyond all of it, a deep and gentle darkness that asks for nothing, that follows nothing, that simply opens, and opens, and opens, until you can drift into it too.